the next speaker will be talking about the most common type of diagrams there are, the pie chart and the donut. And here, while previously you have been using pie charts since you were about the age of 7, this will be a complete game changer. So I welcome the technical sales specialist or the person who is sometimes up at 1 a.m. at our time zone and helping clients deal with the questions, Aivis Pavlovs. Without any further ado, the floor is yours, Ivy.
Thank you, Davis. Just a quick check. Mike's okay. You can hear me all right. Yep.
Yes, we can see you and we can see pie charts already.
Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. So yeah, like Davis said, my name is Aivis. I'm a technical sales engineer here at ZoomCharts. And what I'm going to do today is take you on a tour with the Donut Visual. I'm going to talk about the initial setup. How do you actually set up the Donut Visual? So what type of data does it support? What are the main metrics you use with it? Then I'm going to go through the formatting options and also cover the most important features of it, how to interact with the visual and these kind of things. If you do have any questions, don't forget there's a Q&A section in the live sessions itself. So just drop your messages and we'll get back to you at the end of the session. All right. So first we're going to start off is, I guess I'm just going to create a new page because the most important thing about the Donut Visual, at least for you who are just going to start out, is the initial setup, right? So all I'm going to do here is just bring in one instance of the Donut Visual. And as you can see here on the right side, we have two types of fields that the visual requires. One of them is the category field, the other is the value field. Now, for the category field, it's a pretty easy field to be used with. And essentially what you do here is just you add categorical data. That can be either, textual information or some sort of coding formats or something like that. And the way you set it up is pretty easy. So what I'm going to do here is, for example, add in a product line. And I'm going to add in my second level of the drill down. That's going to be my sales rep. And I want to aggregate everything by total amount of sales. So there you go. Nothing too complicated. It's really easy to create the initial donut. So don't really worry about that. Now, some of the great things that this visual offers is the unique ability to have these on-chart drill downs. And in order to control these levels, you can use these category fields right here. Essentially, the order on how you place them here is also going to define the hierarchy. So for example, right now you can see that my first level is the product line and the second one is my sales rep. If I just simply switch them around, I'm going to have my sales rep on the first level, and when I click on it, I go down to a product level. So the hierarchy is just controlled by the field setup, and it's really easy and intuitive to use. Now, when it comes to the visual itself, there are a few things that we did slightly differently, because what we've noticed so far is, the Donut Visual has always been a visual that partially some people love, and there's also going to be somebody who's going to say to you, never use donuts, they're hard to read, they don't add any value, it's just a mess of a visual, for example. But that's not really the case. The most common, I would say, reason for that is because the donut has been misused a lot. And one of the reasons is because they're not following any kind of data visualization practices. So what we try to do with our visuals is follow up at least most of them and to kind of give you a quick way to make sure that the visual actually makes sense. So for example, one thing you're going to notice with our visual that's happening almost every single time is it's going to be ordered from the highest slice and it goes downwards in a clockwise rotation. And the highest slice is always going to start from 12 o'clock. So that's just one simple thing that you can do, but it makes a lot of difference when it comes to data visualization. So you don't have, for example, high slice here, the second biggest one is right around here or something like that. You have to have some order within the visual so your users don't get confused as to what data and how to follow the data. Now, the next thing is, for example, something like the interactions. In order to kind of quickly showcase that, I'm going to add quickly a KPI visual. Let's just make it smaller. Add it right here and use again the same total sales. So right now you can see that the category, since I'm using all of my data, the total sales amount is 3.69 million. As soon as I'm going to start, for example, to click on one of the slices, you can see that this number changes. And that's because the donut visual also works as a slicer or a filter. So essentially, every single click you do with a visual is going to change the rest of the report. And this is one of the main use cases for the Donut Visual. It's really good to be used as a navigational tool to kind of limit the amount of information that you're seeing on a screen at one single time. And as far as the interactions go, since we're covering this, is one thing that you can notice here is in order to, for example, open Violet Benitez and see what product lines is she selling, all I have to do is just simply click on one of the slices. If you would be using a tablet or a smartphone, all you would have to do is just simply tap on one of the slices. So that's kind of something that we're really after for as well. We want you to have these usability of the chart to be as easy and simple as possible. If you want to select something here, for example, since I'm only having 2 levels of the drill down in this visual, if I click on a slice, you can see it's being brought out a little bit. So that just showcases that this slice is being filtered out now, and that's the one that's passing those values through. Now, another thing that you can see happening in the background is this inner donut. To kind of showcase it a little bit more, I'm actually going to add one more category here, and that's going to be my region. And I'm going to add it on the first level. So what you can see here, for example, is as soon as I click on one of the slices, the slice color and the part that it actually contributed to is being held and, let's say, kind of like captured in the middle of the donut. And if I choose something else here, let's choose the purple slice, you can see the colors and the placement of the slice and the sizes of them are always kept in the middle. So that really helps you with understanding what exactly has been filtered out, what level of the drill down are you on, because one of the most common, I would say, mispractices of visuals is when you don't really have a reference line as to where are you actually located right now. It could be that you're, on the 4th level of the drill down, but if you don't have some visual cues for it, it's really easy for the user to get lost. Now, another thing that we have done with the Donut Visual, I'm going to just put it in focus mode for this one, is I hope you can see clearly there's a small inner white line going throughout the visual, right? And what this inner white line actually represents is that this visual has a drill down level available. So it means that if a user clicks on it, there's more data that's underlying. So for example, I'm going to go down to the 2nd level. If I click on another slice, you can see, for example, since I have 3 drill down levels here in the category bucket, on the 3rd level, I don't really have that white line anymore. So this means that this is the last level of the hierarchy that this visual has in this particular use case. Now, another thing that we introduced for the Donut Visual is the other slice. And you can activate it it's activated by default. You can see it says number of slices 15. But if I simply change the number to, let's say, 3, for example, you can see that the visual now highlights those 3 slices, and the rest of them are combined into this others bucket. And what's really great about this other slice is that it's still an interactive slice. And what I mean by that is if I click on it, it allows me to kind of open up that other bucket and see the other contributing slices. Just going to quickly change the sizing mode for this one. So essentially what we also allow you to do is to focus on certain amount of slices. That's one of the things. And it also allows you to minimize the amount of, let's say, visual information that you're providing for a user. There's a particular reason why the other slice is grayed out, because the more colors you have it in the visual, the higher the chance that users are going to get confused at one point. So for example, right now you can see I'm seeing top 3 contributors. If I click on others just once, now I'm seeing 4th, 5th, and 6th slice to the whole donut. And the others and previous is grayed out, so I can focus on the slices that we're actually looking at right now. Similarly, it could be, of course, done without any other slices or anything like that. But in that case, for example, if I quickly disable the others, and I say, for example, to you, okay, so now we're going to focus on 3rd, 4th, and 5th slice, right? You have to visually count them. You kind of say, okay, so these are the 3 slices we're focusing on. But trust me, at one point, the users are going to start to look around because there's a lot of color there. So it's just something like, these really simple things that we add to the visual that allow you to understand what exactly I'm looking at. There's no distraction when it comes to the actual data representation, and it's just easier for a user to follow. Now, if we go away from this page and open up this example, you can also see that, like I mentioned, the visual is actually working as a slicer as well. And I know it's kind of hard to, for example, to get the full picture when I'm just using one metric or one KPI. So what I'm going to do here is there's a specific reason why I have this table right here. So if I click, for example, on vintage cars, you can see that this now is being passed as my initial filter. So the product line I'm looking at is only vintage cars. Now, if somebody chooses, let's say, EMEA region, it adds a combinational filter. So vintage cars and EMEA is the information I'm looking at. And then you can kind of already see where you can start to combine either multiple levels within one single visual or create two instances of the visual to kind of slice and dice through the information and make sure that your user can achieve the results that he's actually after for. Okay, we went through that. Now, since the use case is pretty simple for the donut visual, the next thing I'm going to cover is going to be the formatting options. When it comes to the formatting options, you have this formatting pane right here, and you can see there's actually a quite decent amount of formatting tabs and settings underneath it. The most important one initially is the donuts tab. So right here you can define the outer radius of the donut. So this just means how much of the actual container from the visual are you using. Then we have the inner radius, small settings, but they give you a lot of power over the visual. Then we have, for example, something like a gauge mode, which in reality is more about, let's call it half pi. But for users, just calling it gauge is more understandable, so we went with that. Then, of course, we have some 3D effects, for example. And again, remember that these settings, none of them are, let's call them mandatory. These are visual settings that just help you to create the visuals to look exactly like you want them to look like. So if you want to use it, you can use it. If you don't want to, just simply disable this toggle and the visual is going to be two-dimensional. So the others and previous also has one other unique option that you can localize them, for example, and that's why we have these free text fields right here. So if you're using your reports in the local language, you can easily type in whatever you want here, or also for other instances, you can type in, as you can see, for example, I just went with it and typed in whatever, and you can see that I don't have the others anymore, but it actually showcases whatever. So in some cases, how we've been using this is, for example, we have, let's say, top 10 salespeople, and the other slice is the bottom 5. So I can say that other is the bottom 5. This is going to be the top 5. In this case, this the example may be a little bit different, but you get the idea. So, for example, you can see here, this is how much the top 5 contributed to the whole. So that's kind of one ways on how you can use these others and previous slices to again help the user to understand what exactly is the other half. So that's just one of them. I'm going to quickly delete these. We don't need it anymore. When it comes to data sorting, like I said, we love to follow, best practices for donuts and how to visualize data. So it's always going to be in a descending order starting from 12 o'clock. But of course, you can choose a different sorting mechanism if you really want to use it. I don't necessarily recommend it, but there are certain use cases where this is really the case that you need to have. So for example, you can also quickly change it to be ascending. So based on a value, so from smallest to highest value. Or you can also choose, for example, to be, let's say, descending, but not based on the value, but based on a name. So this is already something that's trying to follow the alphabetical order of things. So there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to the visual and how it can be formatted, but it's really up to you to just make sure that not only you understand how to use it, but also your users have a clear understanding of what the visual is meant for, what it supports, and what I'm supposed to do with it. One quick idea, for example, what I typically do, especially when it's just, let's say you're bringing Power BI within the organization as a new addition. Don't be afraid to add some textual references, because the initial drafts of the reports are there for users to start to kind of get more accommodated with the Power BI, how it works, what you do with them. And that's, for example, one of the reasons why I added just a couple of rows of text right here. So when a user opens up a report, he can actually see what I'm recommending him to do. So just try clicking on the slices, see how it filters out. And once they get more familiar and kind of, used to this interaction, you can, of course, delete them and fill the page with other visuals or things like that. So I'm going to go back to the value sorting. All right, we went through the donut settings. The next formatting tab would be the legends block. So for the legends, of course, you can, choose the positions of it. So you can place it on the left, right, top, or bottom half of the visual. You can adjust the height, the width of the legends block, the marker sizes, marker shapes, different font families, styles, colors, things like just a lot of formatting options. But one unique thing that we do offer is the ability to have this floating legend. And what the floating legend actually allows you to do is, as you can see, for example, when I hover one of the legends, there is a slightly blue background, right? And you can see it always ends around here. So there's like an invisible line that is right there to hold down the donut itself, and it does not allow the donut to go into the legends block. But in certain cases where you don't have a lot of these slices that you're showcasing at one given time, or you just want to limit the amount of information again, you can use the floating option, enable it, and you can see this allows the chart to actually go a little bit over the legends block itself. And for example, if I'm using this navigation, you can see that I still have enough room for my legends there. It looks really nice. The visual is centered. It's utilizing the most spaces possible. So just to quick kind of show you what happens when you have too many labels, let's go back to the donut visual, and let's say increase this one to be at 15 so it shows all the slices. Yeah, so for example, right here, you can see that for trucks and buses, I cannot see the actual value because the chart is on top of it. So just make sure when you're using the floating legends option is that you play around with all the drill down levels, with all the options to make sure that none of the elements actually start to disappear. Because trust me, your users are going to notice this and you're going to be the one who's going to be responsible for it. So let's go back to 3 slices since that works in this case. Let's open up legends block. Yep, we went through almost everything. Now, the next thing is the detail labels. Now, the detail labels is this element right here that you see, for example, right now in the inner part of the donut, but you can also place this on the outside. Actually, I'm going to disable legends for this, just as an example. So you can see that now the detail labels have a connector, and these are connected to the actual slices, so it showcases the category, the value, the percentage value. And the great thing about this is that we also allow you to choose what specifically do you want to showcase there. If you want to have something really simple, you could go just with, for example, something like a category name, and that's it. You don't really have any value references, as you can see. But if you hover over the slice, you can see in the tooltip the actual name, the value, and the percentage value. So it just allows you to play around with the visual, see what works for your case and what's really usable for your end users. If you want to have, let's say, a particular view where nobody really likes to, let's say, I don't know, kind of have concatenated values or something like that, they just want to have everything at the go. Sure, let's go back to the label style and say that I want to showcase all detail labels. So now also in the connecting lines, I have all the labels, so category values and the percentage values. Now, one setting that is specific for our visuals is these two right here, so value decimals and percentage decimals. Of course, these can be configured through the data model, but the added benefit of using these ones is that you can change the value decimals and the percentage decimals on per visual basis. And what I mean by it is, for example, I'm using total sales in both of these donuts, right? But on this one, I'm going to say that I want to have the display value always in millions. For some reason, I want to have, let's say, 4 value decimal numbers. And for the percentages, I want to round it up to 3 value decimal numbers. So for example, you can showcase something like this. But if I hover over a slice again, you can see that the tooltip allows me to showcase information in a slightly different way. So one way on how you can utilize this is, for example, to create higher aggregated values on the connectors, so the detail labels, but also allow the more detailed view in the tooltip itself. So for example, just to showcase that example would be, let's change the value decimals to be on 2. Percentage decimals, I don't want to have any extra decimal numbers. And I have relatively clear visual, right? So for example, classical cars, 0.93 million, 25%. If I hover over the slice in the tooltip, I see a more detailed view of it. If I want to play with it a little bit more, I can close down this one, open tooltip settings, and say that in the tooltip, I actually don't want to have any aggregation whatsoever for the values. And I want to have 2 decimal numbers since that's actual money. And percentages, fine, I'll go with 2 decimal numbers as well. So if I hover over it, you can see this just allows you to have that flexibility when it comes to showcasing the same information just in different ways. So when a user is just quickly looking at the visual, he has higher aggregated values. It's easy to read, easy to comprehend. But if he wants to have a more detailed view, just hovers over the slice and sees a more detailed number, and let's say an exact number, so it's easier for other users to understand. When it comes to tooltips, of course, we support both the built-in tooltips, so our tooltips, and we support the Power BI tooltips. So for example, if you want to transition between them, all you have to do is just choose Power BI built-in tooltip. So for example, when I hover over it, you can see it uses the native tooltip. And one thing I wanted to point out here is if you choose to use the native tooltips, just remember that you need to scroll down a little bit. Well, in my case, I have a bigger screen, it's easier. And we have a separate tab right here called tooltip. So this is where you customize the Power BI built-in tooltips. Unfortunately, we don't really have a way to combine both of these, let's say, formatting tabs. But it's just a small inconvenience but still have a great value for it. So for the tooltips, you can choose whether it's using the default tooltip by itself, or are you using report page tooltips or something like that, have different value labels and these kind of things. For example, if you choose to use the report page tooltips, we can actually just create a quick example as well. I'm going to go here, say that this is going to be the tooltip. I know it might seem a little bit fast, but trust me, you'll get a hang of it. It's just, practice makes you perfect. So what I'm quickly going to create here is actually a showcase of the report page tooltips. So I'm going to go for, yeah.
Yes, quickly is the correct word. You're running out of time soon, Ivy?
Yeah, it's just 3-4 minutes and I'm done really. So for example, I can create a table right here. I'm going to add a card right here at the very top of it. And here I'm going to showcase, let's say, the region that I selected. Yep. And when I hover over here, so this is the one right here, you can see that, let's open up the formatting options. So tooltip, page 2. And when I hover over it, you can see that in the tooltip, it actually provides me, again, a table with more visuals and more information within it. So, that's one of those things that I really recommend you to do. Don't be afraid to try out different features and how you can use the visuals. Don't be afraid to combine multiple visuals on the same report page because they can be used to showcase different dimensions for the same data, right? One last thing I wanted to quickly cover is going to be the fill color. And the fill color is pretty simple to use as well. So for example, right here, I'm going to go and disable the others. And you can see these are the default colors. Now, if I go here and choose a gradient to a derived color, you can see it adds a little bit of a shadow effect on top of it. So it just makes the visual look a lot nicer, I call it more alive, right? It's more visually pleasing. And something that we also recently added is the ability to choose a base color and have an option that every single slice afterwards has a lighter gradient available. So just a lot of flexibilities we try to offer with the visuals. And yeah, we're running out of time, but if you do have any questions, Q&A, I'm here to answer. And of course, if you have any follow-up questions, just leave it in the chat and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Yeah, that pretty much covers it.
Thank you, Aivis. The first wasn't a question, it was a comment. Good job in improving the pie visual. Because yes, this is what we have been using for most of our lives since school, and this is a game changer. We have a question: are there any limitations for this visual? What features are available for free? Could you comment?
So sorry for that. So for the free visual, what we offer is the innate, let's call the drill down experience, so you can just play around with it. But all the customizations, almost everything that I showcased, is part of the paid version of the visual. But if you want to try out the visuals, don't worry. What we also, of course, offer is a free 30-day trial. So if you go to our website, you can download the visuals, activate them, and use them free of charge with all the features, no restrictions or anything for 30 days. And I mean, if it doesn't showcase the value in those 30 days, there's no reason to keep exploring it. I mean, let's be honest about it.
Okay, thank you. We might have time for one more question, so use the opportunity to add the questions on the Q&A folder, this tick of the questions. And I wanted to ask, you mentioned that, yes, pie charts are very common, almost everybody uses them, but people do make mistakes. And we see in media and some even memes have been made on what are the worst pie charts that are published, even in newspapers, made mistakes by journalists and so. And could you tell about the most prevalent mistakes so that the participants of the bootcamp also do not go into mistakes?
Sure. The most common mistake I would say is not following any data sorting principle. And what I mean by that is, I get that, for example, like I mentioned, there are certain cases, really specific cases, where you can use the alphabetical sort, but in 99.9%, you should be using value aggregation, either ascending or descending, so increasing or decreasing values. And the most important feature about the donut visual is it has to always start at one single point. Don't try to start from mysterious points. So for example, like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, or something like that. Try the visual to have more consistency within it. And other thing is, the reason why we added the other slice is really specific one. Don't have too much information within the donut visual. If you have too many slices, it becomes really hard to explore them and compare them. So just, that's why the other slice is there. It's there to help you to limit the amount of information, again, that you're showcasing to your users.
Okay, I have a follow-up question about this.
Sure.
You said you showed this nice demo about how ZoomCharts automatically prevents you from making mistakes. It's always 12 o'clock. If you choose a color, it is automatically, that I liked from design, that I don't have to choose my own colors. It's just automatically decreasing. Then the follow-up question, which could be rephrased, how hard it is to make unreadable charts using ZoomCharts. Does the automatical, how to say, these algorithms, do they even, can you make mistakes?
Sure, you can make mistakes. It really depends on the amount of information that you have available, right? Because if you have really increased the number of categories, so for example, you're trying to, compare hundreds of different categories or even 20 different categories, just be aware the donut visual is not the greatest solution for that. The donut has its really specific use cases, and try to stick with them. If you follow the default formatting option, so you're not even changing anything. And I can even do that right here. So for example, when I use this visual, so right here, I'm using just the default settings. Okay, I don't have that many categories. I can use, for example, something a little bit different, like product category or something. And you can see, this is not a good practice. You can't read anything here. And this is why we have these formatting options. So as soon as I enable this one and the default value is here, 15, even this is a better solution that, for example, you can achieve with different visuals that don't have these capabilities. So we're trying, but, you can't make anything really bulletproof.
Yes, with the algorithms, you could help people not make mistakes.
Yeah, sure. It's there for a reason, so.
Okay, we're out of questions for this time. Thank you, Aivis, for the presentation and the demo and about reimagining pie charts and donuts. And see you throughout the bootcamp later.
Thank you. Have a good luck, everyone.
Bye-bye.